Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whether you're joining me from the present or the future. Welcome back to another FutureFight Vanguard video. This is the third video of this Saturday, catching up for the past couple of days where I've just been either working or too tired. But we actually finished up GBT13, so that's great. We're moving into G Extra Booster Set 2, the Zoo Nation booster. So this is where we talk about everything mean, everything green. Everything disgusting, bugs, and all that stuff. But yeah, let's. So today we're just going to be talking about one of the premier decks of G-EB02, which would be Ahsha. This is our G-Break Neonectar deck. So let's get right into that. We're going to flip up all of our G units as usual, and then we are going to start talking about them. Starting off with our grade 3s, we have 7 grade 3s. We have the new blue Sha, or new blue Ahsha, whatever you would like to call her. She came out of this set, and honestly, as a Neonectar player, I can just say she is a godsend in terms of what she can do and the presence that she brings to the board, having her as your Vanguard. She has 2 abilities. The first one says, at the beginning of your ride phase, choose up to 1 card from your drop zone and circle other than Vanguard circle, and then put them on the bottom of your deck in any order. If 2 cards are put, you draw a card, and you can choose if you want to call a card to rearguard or not. So let's break down all the different parts of this ability and why that's so useful and so good, just the first ability alone. So first of all, it activates at the beginning of your ride phase. This is obviously before stride, so you can do whatever you need to do before stride, and then get your field going and get your field set up before you even stride. Secondly, it chooses a card from your drop zone and a circle from your field. So basically, if you choose a card from your drop zone, that means that you can put back triggers, number 1. If you choose a card from your rearguard circle, not only do you get to put back units and rearguards, you also get to put back cards that are locked by Link Joker. So this gives us finally a little bit of a way to fight against Link Choker, which really Neonectar hasn't had ever, or for a long time is what we really needed. You also draw a card, so you're not minusing, you're just breaking even. So that's really good, and also it allows you to clear up a space on your board so that you can also just facilitate your bloom abilities and try to bloom multiple times. Then we have our second ability, that says, also, I guess I should mention that in the first ability, if you don't have a rear guard on the field, then it allows you, or if you would clear your board by putting back a card, you are able to call a card so that you can have a card to, trigger off of Blue Ahsha's second ability. So the second ability is when your G unit strides, you can counterblast 1. If you do, you search your deck up to 1 normal unit with the Bloom ability. Unfortunately, it says normal unit, so we can't call like stand triggers like Lisbeth and stuff like that. I guess that would just be too broken. But yeah, counterblast 1, if your G unit strides, you search your deck for 1 normal unit with the Bloom ability, call to rearguard circle, shuffle your deck, and if the number of your units with the same name as that unit is 2 or more, you countercharge 1 and soul charge 1. So what this means is that you always want to call another Bloom unit of something that you have on the field already, so that you can efficiently use your resources, and you can keep your soul high for things like Diane and things like Leslie, and you can also fuel your counterblast because you have a lot of things that counterblast in this deck. Moving on to our backup grade 3, we have the new old Ahsha, the middle Ahsha, in terms of being old and new. We have Ranunculus of Searing Heart Ahsha at 3. It has 3 abilities. The first one is the Bloom ability, that is Generation Break 2 on the Vanguard circle. When your other unit with the same card name as this unit is placed on rearguard circle, countercharge 1, soul charge 1. The second ability is at the end of each turn, choose a card from your hand and you may call it to rearguard circle. That's basically just to set up for your next turn in a way that Blue Ahsha does already, so you kind of just want to ride Blue Ahsha instead. But also, this allows you to get rid of stuff at the beginning of your turn, rather than at the end of your opponent's turn where something weird could happen to it. Then you have the third ability that says during your turn when your G unit strides, you can counterblast 1, soul blast 1. If you do, you choose one of your rear guards, you search your deck for up to one card with the same name as that unit, call it to rear guard circle, shuffle your deck, and the unit called with this effect gets the boost ability. So a pretty good ability. Obviously not as good as Blue Ahsha, but still very useful if you happen to have to ride it as your second backup ride. Then moving into our grade 2s, we have 4 Collective Blooming Maiden Kara. This is one of our new cards that also helps us fight against control and resist as well. Yeah, so control and link choker I meant to say. But yeah, the first continuous skill is on the rear guard circle. If you have a Vanguard with a Ranunculus in its name or a Bloom ability Vanguard, then this unit gets plus 1,000 power and resist. So it's really, really good because obviously all of our grade 2s are Bloom. So from the minute that you ride grade 2, this card and Diane's first effect will always be active. So it's really good because we only have Ranunculus grade 3s and we only have Bloom grade 2s. So you have to ride a Bloom grade 2 for this to even be on the field. So that will always be active basically. So it will always be 10k with resist. Then the Bloom ability is the secondary ability that says if it's on the rear guard circle and your generation break 1, when your other unit with the same name as this card is placed on rear guard circle, this unit gets plus 10,000 power and boost. So this is really good because it allows you to do combos with like Velhamina where you call like double Kara. Both Karas see each other, they both bloom, they both get 10,000 and boost, and then they're both already 10k with resist. So basically you end up having a resist column that is 40k. So that's just really, really good because the second Kara can boost because of the bloom. Then we have 4 Plumeria Flower Maiden Charl. I have to admit that I've never really liked this card, but this card is like really, really, really good in the early game, as you guys will see in some of our games, where, you know, I ride a grade 3 first. I get to like set up my board. If my opponent happens to not ride or something unfortunate happens to them, then I can just pressure them even more with Charl. And like having Charl and Blue Ahsha in like the early game is like so strong because every single time you can just, you know, facilitate cards with Ahsha, guard with cards with Ahsha, and then use Charl to just check top 7, call them back. But the official abilities of Charl is the first ability is auto rear guard skill when this unit attacks a Vanguard. If you have a Vanguard with a Ranunculus in its card name, you may look at the top 7 cards of your deck, call up to 1 card with the same name as any of your units from among them to open rear guard circle, and shuffle your deck. So really good, can, you know, plus you a lot, get a lot of things done in the early game. The second ability is Bloom Generation Break 1 on the rear guard circle. When your other unit with the same card name as this unit is placed on rear guard circle, choose any one of your rear guards and they get plus 4,000 and boost. So it's very important that if you call a Charl, obviously you want to give the 4k and the boost to the back row Charl, so that it can boost and be a 22k column if 2 Charls are in the same column. And then if they both get called at the same time, you can give 4k to each of them, making them a 26k column. So really good. Then we have 4 Promotion Maiden Ripseti or Ripset. So its Bloom ability is rear guard skill once per turn. When your other unit with the same card name as this unit is placed on rear guard circle, choose all of your units in the same row as this unit. So row is across, column is up and down, remember that. So when you activate Bloom, you give it to the row. So if this card is in the front row, you play another one, it'll give 4k to the front row. And then if you have a face-up card in their G-zone, they get boost. So you kind of want to activate it on your back row just so that all of them can get boost. Like let's say you have a lot of grade 2s in your back row, or things that you normally wouldn't be able to boost with, grade 3s, etc. You can do this and then they will gain boost. Then we have 4 Padmini, because this is our Ahsha Stride Fodder. Obviously you want to search the right Ranunculus Ahsha card when you can, and then also you want to stride as efficiently as possible with 1 card, which would be what this card helps with. Then we have 4 PGs, which is Seeding Maiden Tyranny. Tyranny has 3 abilities. The first one is Sentinel, cannot use more than 4 Sentinels in your deck. You guys know that already. Second ability is when you PG, you can PG any of your units with Ranunculus in its name. So if you have Ranunculus rear guards, you can PG those. But you can also PG your Vanguard at all times. And then it cannot be hit until the end of the battle. And then you have your Bloom ability, which says when your unit with the same name as this card is placed on the guard circle, you can bind this card face up, and then if you do, you choose the card with your Bloom ability from your drop zone, put into your hand. So I really only use the third ability when I already have 2 PGs in my drop zone and I go for the third PG. I just bind one of the cards face up from my drop zone and then add another PG back to my hand. It's like really good for recycling PGs. And if you by chance need something really badly, then you can get something else. Like for example, you can get like Searing Heart Ahsha if you need a stride fodder to end the game the next turn after that. Then we have for Prosperity Maiden Diane. Diane does the same thing quite literally as Kara. She's just a grade 1 version of it. So grade 1, she becomes 8k resist whenever we have a Bloom ability, Vanguard, or Ranunculus. Again, all of our grade 1s except for Padmini are Bloom. So when you ride any card, Diane should be 8k from the jump. She should also have resist from the jump. And then Bloom, Generation Break 1 once per turn. When your other unit with the same name as this unit is placed on rearguard circle, this unit gets plus 10,000 power. And then the additional effect that's different from Kara says at the end of your turn, you can Soul Blast 1. And if you do, you return this unit to your hand. So calling Diane is just a little bit better than calling Kara because they do make the same guard stage when they are in the same column. So this makes 40k when both of the Karas go off, and this makes 36k when both of the Dianes go off. But at the end of the turn with the Dianes, you get to Soul Blast 2 and return both to your hand. So it keeps your soul free, and it's like a recycle engine that just goes in a circle. You soul charge a card from Ahsha, it goes to the drop zone, you recycle it with Lisbeth or another card, and then it's back in your deck to be called again and start the cycle again. So just really good. I really like recycle decks like this, and that's why I'm a Neonectar player. But for our last grade 1, we have 2 Succession Maiden Leslie. It has 2 abilities. First one is Bloom, rearguard skill once per turn. When your other unit with the same card name as this unit is placed on rearguard, you can soul charge 1. So when you play another Leslie, you have a Leslie on the board, you can soul charge 1. And then the auto rearguard Generation Break 1 ability is at the end of the battle that this unit boosted a unit with the Bloom ability, you can Soul Blast 2 and retire this unit. If you do, you choose up to 1 card from your deck with the same name as the boosted unit, and then you call it to rearguard circle, shuffle your deck. So this allows for multi-attacks. This is especially good on Valhamina turns where your GB4 is already active, because you can attack with any of these, and then have Leslie boosting it, and then at the end of that battle, use Leslie to get another Kara, or get another Charl, or get another Ripsetti. And then what you do is it'll have 5k and a crit from the from Valhamina. So it'll be additional attacks all up in your opponent's face, which is really good. For our starter, we run 1 Planting Mason Ozu. This is our new card of the deck. That is our new starter. We really don't ever use the second ability, but we use the third ability a lot to get that extra draw. So the first ability is Forerunner, which is you can, like most starters in the game, just move it back when ridden upon. You guys know that already. The second ability is the Bloom ability that says rearguard circle. When your other unit with the same card name as this unit is placed on rearguard circle, this unit gets plus 2,000 power. So that's such a useless Bloom ability that I don't even want to run more than 1 starter, so I don't. Then the third ability is when your grade 1 or greater with the Bloom ability is placed on the rearguard circle, you can counterboss 1, shove this card into your soul, and draw a card. So this really helps with the early game. Like, you can draw an extra card, and it pretty much like rewards you for rushing. Because like, let's say that you ride a Kara on turn 2, then you play a Charl on the rearguard circle, use Ozu skill, shove into the soul, draw a card, and there you go. You just play that card for free, essentially. Then we have, for our triggers, we run 8 crit, 4 stand, 4 heal. Keep in mind that this is also the English version, which is why we are running 4 Lisbeths in Japan. This would be at 1, so we would probably just run in the Japanese version either the stand trigger that gets 5k and puts itself back. I'm forgetting what it's called. I think it's Maiden of Daybreak, I think it is. And then, or you can just run 12 crit in the Japanese version, and it works just fine as well. But going over our build, we have 4 Milas. So Milas is our G-era Ranunculus crit trigger that shoves into the soul when Vanguard attacks. You draw a card and your Vanguard gets plus 5,000. Builds your soul, makes your Vanguard super big in case your opponent doesn't have a PG. Very useful. Then we have this new crit trigger, which is Themeda Argument Musketeer Raquel. So what Raquel does is on the rearguard circle, the guard circle, and the drop zone, it is regarded as a normal unit instead of a trigger unit. So the reason why this is important is because all cards that would put back normal units back to the deck can put back Raquel back to the deck. So that's the like biggest reason I like her, hands down. Because when you use stuff like Lisbeth that allows you to just recycle your normal units, you can recycle your crits as well, as far as these crits at least. Then we have Cosmos Fairy Lisbeth at 4. You guys know this card. It's been put on the ban list. Like, it's super good. It has the Bloom ability, Rearguard skill, Generation Break 1. When your other Lisbeth is played on Rearguard Circle, choose up to 5 units named Cosmos Fairy Lisbeth on your Rearguard Circle, and they gain a skill that says for free. You just choose a unit from your drop zone, choose a normal unit from your drop zone, and then you choose up to 4 cards with the same name as that card from your drop zone, return them to your deck, return this card to your deck, shuffle, and draw a card. So basically, it's just really good, like for putting stands back to your deck, recycling your cards, and drawing you a card all at the same time, so you don't minus. Then we have 4 Anthurium Musketeer Nikora. Nikora is our new binding heal for Neonectar, which basically means that when you G-Guard with it, bind this card in another face-up heal so that you can countercharge one or soul charge one. Choose one or the other. So since this is our first time doing the Zoo booster, this will be you guys' first time on my videos at least seeing Zoa, the ultimate stride. So this is the ultimate stride for the Zoo Nation. Of course, it has the ultimate stride clause, which means that you have to discard the same cost as your Vanguard to ultimate stride into this, and then you also have to have 3 or more cards face up in your G zone already. So you can triple G guard and go into a first stride if you really want to, but you do have to have 3 face up cards in your G zone already, no matter what those cards are, whether they be normal G units or G guardians. Then at the end of your turn, if you fail to kill your opponent, then all of your G zone gets bound, removed from the game, so you can't enter Generation Break for the rest of the game. So pretty important to note that you want to kill your opponent when you go into this card. Zoa's skill is when it's placed on the Vanguard Circle, you can counterblast 2. If you do, you draw a card, and you choose a card from your hand called your Rearguard Circle, and then if you do, it gets 2 abilities. The first ability is this unit cannot be chosen by any card effect, including your own triggers, and its power will always be 99,999. So it basically makes this card like infinite power, so to speak. They should have just said infinite power, but really they just put 99,999 so that you can still have a chance of guarding it. It'll just take a lot out of your hand if you're not PGing. And then the second ability is when this unit deals a damage to your opponent's Vanguard, your opponent loses the game. So it's straight up just a kill condition, like you give the card like infinite or like a big amount of power, and then if you attack your opponent, they don't have a PG, they can't guard it. Even if they're at 1 damage and they take this damage as their second damage, they just lose the game automatically. So it can be a very strong finishing card, or it can be a very weak finishing card, depending on what your opponent has in their hand. Then we have 2 Flower Princess of 4 Seasons, Velhamina. Velhamina is one of our new cards from G-EB02 that makes Ahsha so threatening. When this unit attacks, you can pay the cost to counterboss 1 and flip a card from your G zone to any card. And then if you do, you search your deck for up to 2 grade 2 or less normal units with the Bloom ability of the same card name, and you call them to rearguard in different rows, which means one has to go in the front row, one has to go in the back row. And then you shuffle your deck. So this card allows for multi-attacks because you can swing with one column, swing with the other column, and then swing with Velhamina and call another column here as stand so that you can swing with that column. So when you have Velhamina on the board, it usually means that you're getting 4 decently sized attacks off. Not to mention if you check stand triggers, you can get like 5 attacks off or something like that. Then we have our Generation Break 4, which is another reason this card is so good. Generation Break 4, all your rearguards in the front row get power plus 5,000 and critical plus 1. So basically it makes your rearguard super threatening when you're Generation Break 4, and you can be Generation Break 4 from second stride, literally, in this deck, by using Velhamina. So just pressure your opponent into an in-game kind of condition, and then you try to, put the pressure on them really hard. Not to mention we also run criticals in our deck, so if your opponent doesn't guard or they ever PG or something, you can just check a critical, stack it on your rearguard, and now that rearguard has 3 critical, which is probably enough to kill your opponent. Then we have 3 Governing Flower Princess Selfina. We really only run Selfina to work with Velhamina So we go into like Lita for our first stride usually. Then we go into Velhamina, and if our opponent survives that twice, both times with Velhamina we flip Selfina, and then we can Selfina and flip Sabreeze or something like that to use the ability, and this unit will get a crit. So Selfina's full ability is during your main phase you can counterboss 1, choose any card from your G zone, turn it face up. Choose the same number of your rear guards as the number of face-up cards in your G zone. They get plus power 2000. And then you search your deck for up to the same number of cards as Selfina's in your G zone. And then you call them to separate rear guard circles, shuffle your deck. And if 2 or more units were called, this unit gets plus 1 critical. So you can make this card and all your rear guards pretty buff. You can also call cards to replenish your board if you don't have a board. And then you can also get a critical off of this skill. So pretty good. Pretty much one of the best first strides that we could have had, in my opinion. It would be Midsummer Flower Princess Lita. Lita's second ability, like the end ability of its first skill, is not really that useful because it only gives 3,000 to 3 of your units, but the first ability is literally like a godsend. So during your main phase, you can counterboss 1, choose a Lita and turn it face up from your G zone, and then you choose up to 1 card from your hand, put into your soul, which means that you do not have to put a unit into soul. A lot of people always question you on that when you will use Lita. They're like, which card did you put into soul? You're like, none. And they're like, oh, but you have to put a card into soul. No, I don't, because it's up to 1, which means 0 is also an option. So you choose up to 1 card from your soul, or from your hand, put into your soul. Then this unit gets the same card names as all the cards in your soul. Then you search your deck for the number of cards that's the same name as this unit, equal to 1 plus your G zone face up, and then call them a separate rear guard circle, shuffle your deck. And of course, if the number of cards in your G zone face up is 2 or more, then you get 3,000 to 3 of your units. So what this means is that when you use the Blue Ahsha skill, assuming that you're on Blue Ahsha, you will be using the skill to I mean, I guess I would assume first stride, it's kind of bad to go into Lita if you're on Searing Heart Ahsha, because Searing Heart Ahsha will Soul Blast. But for Phantasmic Blue Ahsha, it's really, really good because you'll call a Bloom ability card, you'll try to countercharge Soul Charge, and then whatever card you just Soul Charge becomes more fuel for Lita to decide what you want on your board. Not to mention, you will ride the cards that are important to you now, because it used to be in the past where you didn't want to ride Bloom units that were important to you because you would want to call them out so that you can start getting your copying off. But Lita makes it so that you don't have to do that anymore. You can just ride up normally, ride the cards that are important to you. So that way, when you do reach Lita, you can just call 2 cards or 3 cards or however many cards you have face up in your G zone plus 1 that have the same name as all the cards in your soul, so that you can call an efficient board. Moving on, we have 1 Flower Princess of Beautiful Winter Inverno. It has 2 abilities. First one is an act ability, second one is an auto. First act ability is Soul Blast 1. Choose a total of 5 normal units from your drop zone and rear guard circle, return them to your deck, and shuffle your deck. If you return 5 cards, counter charge 1, soul charge 1. So obviously very good card, kind of, you know, fuels your refund, your return. And then also it works very well with the second ability, which is when your unit is placed on the rear guard circle, if you're Generation Break 2, you can counterblast 1 and discard a card. If you do, you choose one of your units with the Bloom ability, and then you search your deck for 2 cards with the same name as that unit, reveal them, put them into your hand, and shuffle your deck. So this card is also really good when you have any Lisbeths on board. You can search for 2 Lisbeths and start plussing insanely and do like a massive like recycle combo, or you can just get your offensive pieces, set up a good board, and try to attack into your opponent for like a good game type scenario. Moving on, we have our Generation Break 8, which is so good in this deck. It's Flower Princess of Serenity, Linrose Premier. So what Linrose Premier does is it's kind of like a Primavera, if you guys know what that card is. We would have ran that card in this deck build, by the way, but we ran Sabreeze in her place. If you guys ever want to take out Sabreeze, you can just run a Primavera instead for early game kill option against rush decks that puts you to high damage. And then this ability skill is when this unit attacks a Vanguard, you choose 3 normal units from your drop zone, return them to your deck. If you do, you choose one of your units, you search your deck for up to 3 cards with the same name as that unit, call them to separate rear guard circle, and until the end of the turn for each unit called, the units called with this effect and the Vanguard get plus 10,000, and then you shuffle your deck. So basically, if you attack with a rear guard you attack with your other side rear guard, and then you attack with Vanguard. Use the skill to select one of your grade 2s. You put 3 units back. You play 3 of that grade 2 to the board, and then your Vanguard will get 30k, and all the cards called get 30k. So it is very, very good. Massive columns. So we run once a breeze. Like I said, it's to you know, try to get over your opponent when they grade lock themselves against you, or when they're just unfortunate against you in general and they can't ride up, and they do not re-ride. Either way, it's a win-win, because they re-ride and you beat them up while you're on grade 3 and they just minus the card by re-riding, or B, they don't re-ride and you Sabreeze them, and the Sabreeze turns in this deck are absolutely disgusting. So you don't want to get Sabreeze by this deck. Then you have, for our G Guardians, we have 2 Flower Princess of Cherries, Koshalinia. Koshalinia has a skill that says Generation Break 1. When this unit is placed on the guard circle, counterblast 1, and choose a face down G guard and turn it face up. If you do, then this unit gets plus 5,000 until the end of the battle. Then you choose up to 1 card from your hand, call it to rear guard circle. And if the number of units with the same card name as the called unit is 2 or more, this unit gets plus 10,000 shield. So if you're using this card at maximum efficiency, it should be a 41k block. But if you don't need to use it as a 41k block, you just need a 31 without calling any cards to the board, then you can just use Koshalinia if you can't use Antero. So what Antero does is, when it's placed on the guard circle, you can Soul Blast 1. If you do until the end of the battle, this unit gets 5,000 automatically. Then if the number of your rear guards is 1 or less, or 4 or more, this unit gets plus 15,000 shield. So maximum efficiency Antero will be a 46k block for you. Obviously you'll just have some times where you just use it as a 31k block, when it'll be good, because you don't like, for either of these cards to reach 31k block, you have to play a card with Rain Breath. And then for Koshalinia, you don't have to play a card, but you have to counterbox 1 and flip a G guard face up. So sometimes it's not worth as just doing Antero to block the attack. Then we have 1 Sacred Tree Dragon, Rain Breath Dragon, to round out our G Guardians and our G Zone in general. This unit's skill is, when this unit is placed on the guard circle, choose up to 1 card from your hand, call to rear guard circle, and this unit gets resist until the end of the turn. And then if you called a card, Rain Breath Dragon himself gets plus 5,000 shield, so it turns itself into a 31k block for you and all of your flower friends. Moving right into the games here, as we open back up our card fight area, so you guys can see this flower power in action. So we are loading up our Ahsha game 1. I think I forgot to put the number. Yeah, there we go. So we forgot to put the actual number for our replay number, because I'm stupid. So we're going to our area again, which is so stupid, because I was just talking to someone about how if you misclick on your replay, you literally have to restart the entirety of area, or it will like do like an error, which is really stupid. But yeah, loading Ahsha 1 up here. We're playing against Ghidorah, which is kind of like a really bad matchup for us, but I guess our opponent just doesn't really remember all their skills during this game. So we kind of just react as if, you know, we would play naturally against someone. But our opponent doesn't ride to grade 2, just attacks us, so we decide to 10k block. We avoid a critical trigger, which is really good. We play Charl, we use Ozu to counterbox 1 shove to soul draw a card. Then we play Charl, and we activate Charl's skill on attack. Check the top 7 for a card. We whiff it, we don't hit anything. Then we attack with Vanguard. We check a critical trigger and a stand trigger, which is literally godlike. He takes 2 damage, he doesn't hit any triggers, which is good again. We attack for 19, checking top 7 for a card. Then we attack with other Charl, checking top 7 for a card. And we call blue Ahsha to the board. He stands and draws. He still doesn't have a grade 2, so he decides to G-assist for his grade 2. He ends up getting the 10k. He pays the cost for G-assist by getting rid of 2 cards from his hand and 2 cards from his G-zone. And then he reveals Ghidorah so that he can keep the 10k. He attacks our rear guard. We no guard because that card doesn't really matter to us. And then we use blue Ahsha skill at the beginning of the ride phase, return our stand trigger and our Ahsha to the deck. We play another card and we play a Milas. So we attack with Charl, check top 7. One of them is a Milas, so we are able to call the Milas to board. And this is just like some of the things that I'm talking about. Like Charl combos in the early game are just ridiculous because without that, we wouldn't have been able to hit with Diane or attack for an effective number. We also wouldn't have been able to shove 2 crits in the soul, draw 2 cards. So we get a stand trigger, we stand Charl, and then we attack with Charl again, checking top 7, and then we call Blue Ahsha once again to the Red Guard Circle to set up for the next turn after that. So he rides into Gridora, he strides with 2 cards. Be aware that I let my opponent do it, but if your opponent rides with a once per turn stride ability like Gridora, and then they stride and they try to activate the stride ability, they won't be able to do it because of how once per turn clauses work in this game right now. Once the new rules come out, you will be able to get around that, I guess, because the once per turn rules change. But he does use Overwhelm skill, and he draws cards. He's only supposed to draw 2, and he drew 3, but he forgot, so he put a card back and he shuffled. He should have honestly just used Prom Larva at the beginning of the ride phase to rest all my cards so that he could prepare to go into Overwhelm, also get himself into a little better of a chance of getting a stride fodder. He also tried to use his grade 1 to shove into soul, draw a card, but he can't do that because that's a dark device skill, meaning that I have to have all units in the same column as his rested, which they weren't, so he's not able to use that skill. He attacks my Vanguard for 31. He checks a grade 3, a grade 2, and a grade 3. So against Ahsha, that's pretty much death. That's a big death sentence because he only has 5k block in his hand. We use Ahsha skill to put a card back, draw a card, put a card back from our drop zone. We use Ahsha skill to call out a Diane. We countercharge Soul Charge. And then we would have used Lita skill, but honestly, I didn't even see it as worth it. So I just used Lisbeth to get some cards, recycle some cards, just because I could. And then I just play a Charl, just cause, literally. And then I just go into battle phase, attack with Charl, and I attack a Vanguard. Normally I would have used Charl's skill, but I didn't just because, my opponent has 5k block in their hand. They're not going to be able to block these 2 attacks. I also hit a critical, so my opponent was just super duper dead. So yeah, that was game 1 with Ahsha. Opening up our Cardfight area again here for game 2. And there we are. Load Ahsha game 2. We're playing against Gridora again, obviously. So we ride Diane, we pass turn over to our opponent. He doesn't have a grade 1 this time, so he doesn't ride. We don't guard, we attack with Charl. And then I was going to actually ride Charl and call Kara to have a 10k based on the Red Guard Circle, but since he didn't ride, that will make our Charl turn so good, once again, like we did last game. So he G-assists for a grade 1, gets rid of 2 cards, puts it back, and then he gets rid of 2 cards, and then he attacks. I take a damage. I ride Searing Heart, unfortunately. If I had Searing Blue Heart, what am I saying? If I had Phantasmic Blue Ahsha, it would be so much better. But yeah, I decided to use Ozu's skill when I call off the other card. I rip a stand trigger and another Searing Heart. He doesn't check any triggers, so I attack him for 9, he guards, and I attack him for 14 just to call another card. He gets a heal trigger and actually does heal off the damage, which is pretty good for him. He attacks for 15 to Vanguard. We block with a 10 because we're not trying to take that damage with the threat of Overwhelm and all that on the board. We do play a Ripsetti from our hand to give 4k to our front row, making them a column on his 15k Vanguard. Then we check 2 cards. Second one's a critical. So we attack his Vanguard for 18. He literally cannot guard it because he has all grade 3s in his hand. He takes a damage. He decides to target the double Charl column for a column that I can't call in that column next turn. He doesn't use Prom Larva here, which he could have to rest all my rear guards, and then he would have drawn 5 cards off of Overwhelm. But instead, he just goes into, he plays Dark Face, Alicedes or Alicedes or something like that. He draws 3 cards when he could have drawn 5, or rather, he could have drawn 6 because Problem Larva draws a card itself too. But I guess my opponent didn't realize that, so he just attacks Vanguard for 21. I no guard. Then he attacks Vanguard. He does triple drive, and he hits a critical trigger, dealing 2 damage to me. No biggie. We do hit 2 triggers, which kind of hurts, but at the end of the day, no biggie. We stride into Valhamina here so that we can make more of a pressure turn against our opponent, because they are playing Gridora. Eventually, they're just going to try to lock us out of the game, so we want to end the game before they can do that to us. So we attack for 26. Our opponent guards with a 10k and 2 5s, and then we attack with Valhamina using the skill to call 2 Karas. Both Karas get plus 10k and boost. Then he G guards with Grise Fort. Grise Fort makes me rest all my rear guards in the back row. And then he gets plus 10, so currently it's a 2 to pass. So yeah, he 2 to passes me. I check 1, check 2, and then I check 3, get a crit, give all of the effects to Kara, attack for 25. He has to guard with all 3 remaining cards from his hand, and he top decks a card that is not a stride fodder, so he is not able to stride. However, he could have used Problem Larva once again to try to draw an extra card. He would have just drawn into a heal, unfortunately, but he could have used it to get some extra advantage out of that, or try to stride at all. But we draw Phantasmic Blue Ahsha, we ride it, we attack with Charl. He's like super duper dead. He only has a PD and a G guard in his hand, and he can't guard 4 really strong attacks. So we go in with Primavera. We call, or sorry, not Primavera, with Valhamina, sorry. We call 2 cards, he no guards, and then we check a critical trigger. So he just takes the 2 crit attack, and then we end up winning that game. So that ends up being Ahsha game 2 that we have won. And then opening up our card fight area for Ahsha game 3 here. So we're loading up Ahsha game 3. This time we're playing against the Magatsu Turbo kind of early game deck. He doesn't, like, I don't know what it is about this person that I'm playing, but he never hits the right grade. I don't know if he just builds his decks kind of weird, or if he just he's just unlucky. So he G-assists into a grade 1. He does use the skill of his grade 1 to get the grade 2, but I was telling him that he has to shuffle first, because that does affect how many cards would be in his deck and his chances of getting it. So I made him put back the card, and then he pays G-assist cost first. So he gets rid of 2 cards from his hand, and then G-assist 2 cards away from the G-zone as well. So he re-rides. He does still get the grade 2, and then he just attacks for 8. I no guard, and he checks a grade 2, which means that his early game is going to be severely hurt, if it hasn't been already, by what's going on, but also because he has all the grade 2s in his hand and he G-assisted 1 away, which means that when he rides, he actually won't get any ride benefits. So he calls cards. He attacks for 9, then 10 to Vanguard, hoping to hit me. I no guard, he doesn't hit me. I use the skill to put back 2 cards, draw a card, then I just attack for 16. I hit a critical and a Charl. Pretty good. He takes 2 damage. 1 is a heal trigger. He heals off the damage. Then he rides the Magatsu Typhoon. He strides into Onibi Blader. Onibi Blader plays a card from hand. He chooses a rear guard, he gets plus 2k, and it can attack on the back row. So he attacks for 26. I no guard this one. And so he checks 1, check 2, and check 3, no triggers. We take a damage, Charl, and then his rearguard can't attack me over here, but his rearguard over here attacks me for 18. I guard it, I put back 2 cards with Ahsha. Beginning of ride phase, I call a Charl. I use Ahsha skill, counter boss 1, call a Charl to the rearguard circle, Ahsha countercharge soul charge. And then we actually, off of the Charl, or sorry, off of the soul charge, we soul charge Diane, which allows us to call double Diane. So this is what I was talking about with like the soul charge, like being really good depending on what you do. So we use Charl, check top 7, call a blue Ahsha to the field, put those cards back just to thin our deck to check, have a better chance of checking triggers. Like expected, we check a stand trigger, and then we check another stand trigger, which was not expected, and we put the power to our rearguard and we stand a card. So we attack for 18, then we attack for 32. He gets another heal trigger, heals off a card. End of the turn, we Soul Blast 2 just to get the both Dianes back to our hand. He does go for a Legion play here instead of striding. So he Legions with Magatsu Typhoon with Magatsu Storm. He uses the Legion skill, all Magatsu units get 5k and boost. And then he uses the Limit Break skill to counter boss 2. And he can call 2 Magatsu Storms, up to 2 Magatsu Storms if you want to. He only calls 1. And then he activates Typhoon skill to discard a card, call a card to rearguard circle, and then at the end of the battle, he returns that to his hand. So he gets the Legion next turn if he survives, and then he also gets to thin his deck out to check some more triggers. So he does check a critical trigger here, putting me at 4. And then his other column attacks me for super big, 31, so we just take it. Yeah, so then we ride, we use the skill at the beginning of the ride phase to use blue Ahsha, get some cards back. Then we use Ahsha's skill to call out a Kara because we don't have any more Charles in there. We play double Elizabeth to do a little recycling before we go into our battle phase. We put back some cards, shuffle and draw, and then we play 2 cards. And then we play a Charl, and we use the Charl to give 4k to itself and boost. So then we attack with 28. He no guards. Then we attack for 26, or sorry, 22. He guards, and then we attack with Valhamina, calling 2 Karas over that, so all 3 Karas on the field bloom. And I knew that would happen, and I was setting up for that in case we got a stand trigger. So we got a crit trigger and nothing else. And so then we attack a Vanguard for 50 with 3 critical, and he PGs. He's left with 1 card in his hand. He re-rides. He chooses to go for the Legion play. He Legions back a crit, a Magatsu Typhoon, and a Magatsu Storm. And then he searches his deck, goes for Magatsu Storm. Then the Legion effect goes off, plus 5k and boost to all Magatsu units. And then Limit Break, he calls up to 2 Magatsu Storms. And then he calls a card as a booster. So at this point we have too much of a grip to actually lose, but we take a damage, we PG 1 card, and then he checks a Typhoon or a Storm, and whatever that grade 2 card is. And then he attacks for 26, we G-Guard with Rain Breath, we don't play a card. We use the skill of Ahsha, put back a card, and then we just go into Zoa because we know that he doesn't have a PG. We draw a card, we call a card to the board, it gets pretty much infinite power, or 99,000 or whatever. And then we play a Diane just to bloom the other one. We attack Vanguard with the Death Touch unit, and even if he would have 6 damage healed, it would have been a Death Touch per game. Which means that was a super good finish. But yeah, that was the 3rd game of Ahsha. So with that being said, that has been the Ahsha FutureFight Vanguard video. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a thumbs up or like. It helps a lot more than you guys think. Also lets me know what types of content you guys enjoy. If you guys have any questions about the deck or how it's run, or any options about the deck, be sure to leave all your comments in the section down below, your questions. And then also be sure to check out our description, which has all of our social media links, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, as well as different ways to support the channel, a little beyond liking and subscribing, which would be our Patreon and our merch store. But yeah, with that being said, this has been Josh from Cardfight Empire, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace, guys.